Okay. So this book was in my list of resources. I think it's really cool. The Creative Tarot by Jessica Crispin. So this is from that book. The moon stands for all we cannot understand rationally, our unconscious desires, our dreams, our fears. It is our wild side, our fishy, intuitive side, the part of us that is still animal. It often shows up when we need to be paying attention to our dreams. And she cites surrealism in general as an icon of this card, and surrealist filmmaker David Lynch specifically. Let me look at the time. Um, I want to give you all time to write, so I might not get super deep into David Lynch, but I might just read like one quote of his. Um, uh, I think of him as both the hermit and the moon, and just to oversimplify the hermit, um, just think about maybe solitude or someone eccentric who kind of goes their own way. Um, and here's a quote from him: "When you sleep, you don't control your dream. I like to dive into a dream world that I've made, a world I chose and that I have complete control over." And then this is from Twin Peaks, 1990. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. Um, and Agent Cooper records his dreams to solve the murder of Laura Palmer. So that's very moon-like. And the Black Lodge, which is what's this is a still of, is an underworld, which reminds me of both the Hermit and the Moon. Um, this is a video of Laura Palmer that you can watch in your own time. That's pretty creepy. So she says in the 1990 show, "I'll see you again in 25 years," which is odd. And then 25 years later, as you may know, he made Twin Peaks: The Return. And again, this was like groundbreaking TV that opened up the way to more surreal, artistic television like The Sopranos, and then Severance, which is one of my favorite shows currently. Um, and this is a still from 2017. This statue is very Venusian, so you could think of it as like aligned with the moon. And this is just one of his, I think this is a still from Inland Empire, which is one of his wackier, wacky even for him movies, very long. Um, and this is combining him with the Hermit. Oh, so I don't think I thought I added, oh, here we go. I mean, just a quick segue into the Hermit. Um, 2025 is a Hermit year because of the math. So 2 plus 2 plus 5 equals 9, and that's the number of the Hermit. And then the moon is the Hermit's teacher card because it is major arcana number 18, which can be broken down into 1 plus 8 equals 9. And we all have a soul and teacher card, like for our whole lives based on our birthdays. And then we have a personal card of the year. And I can send out a cheat sheet on how to calculate that if you wanted. People get really confused with it though. So there's also like websites where you can just put your birthday in and it will just tell you what it is. Um, okay, so back to Ariana Reines. I want to move on to her essay. So she is a poet born in 1982 in Salem, Massachusetts, which is very witchy. And I would say her work, I'm a big fan of her poetry, is definitely strange and often surreal or dreamlike. And the essay, I know it's kind of an older essay at this point, because it's the beginning of the pandemic, but I thought the archetypes of the hermit and the moon were so beautifully expressed that I chose this one. But she has a whole series of these essays, so you could read other, if you liked this one, you could read other ones. So before I pulled out some quotes myself, but I wanted to just check in and see if there were quotes that people, quotes or images that stood out to you or questions that you had. Yeah, Adriana.
There, yeah, there was a lot of pregnancy references.
Mm.
And I was like, yeah, that's very moon, I feel like.
Yeah.
And the
And like, and also talking about like her
cycles,
period.
yeah.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, you kind of have to do it. Um, and all uh, the various like artists in solitude that she was
Yes.
talking about. I looked into a few of those, and she mentions Julian of Norwich, which is
Mm-hmm.
like she's the first woman known to write in English. She like wrote the first thing in English or something. I thought that was crazy. And she had like
Oh.
rev yeah, she lived in seclusion and um at one point in her life she had like she was taken nearly to death by an illness, and it gave her these like
Oh.
revelations and visions, and then like the rest of her life she spent like trying to like write about these visions. Basically, I thought that
Okay,
was really
that's
cool.
super moon card.
Just a random thing.
And also very high music.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we're gonna dive into some of those pregnancy and quotes. What else did showed up for people?
I mean, I really related to how she said, like, during the pandemic, people were making art, but she wasn't really able to because I really had that same experience. I think because I wasn't having outside influences to like get me going, I just
Yeah,
stopped writing. It was very strange, even though I had all this time. So I think I related to that.
that's interesting. And it's also interesting that the astrology, that was an emperor year, 2020.
Hmm.
So that makes sense in that the emperor is empire and its structures, and a lot of our structures started to break down. Um, but you would think that it would have been more aptly titled The Hermit Year versus 2025. So that's just like something to think about. Um, how it's a little bit random and we're like making the meaning, you know? Um, okay, I'm gonna dive into some more quotes. So she writes that artists already know the transubstantiation of loneliness into solitude. So the turning of one thing into another, a kind of alchemical um act, which makes me think of the temperance card, which is art and the Thoth, which I wish the image was right here, but and then she also says, and what about solitude's products? What about great works of art? And then as Adriana was saying, she lists a lot of different artists and like kind of I see the hermit as an artist, sort of like a lone figure like David Lynch, like someone who's like doing groundbreaking work. Um, yeah. And what we are facing right now is death. And again, just to echo what I said earlier, there are those two towers, there's a portal that we all walked through. And here's some of the other quotes, cycles of a woman's bodies quote that does align with moon, but also reminds me of Empress, since Empress is pictured as a pregnant woman. She's in the forest, everything is blooming. It's like fertility, creativity. It's also like glamour. Um, so, and in another sense, we are all pregnant, and this is our lying in. And the fuller the moon got, the closer I got to bleeding. And the closer I got to bleeding, the more I dilated with love and affection, the more I yearned for the one lesson I've barely begun to learn, the lesson of not turning away. So that lesson of not turning away reminds me of the hermit too. Like he's looking down into the underworld and he's not turning away from those horrors. She has a new book out. Oh my gosh, it's around here. I usually have it behind me. Oh wait, it is behind me. It's called Wave of Blood. I don't know how I forgot. Um, so she returns to this theme of menstruation, but she is Jewish, but she's writing of the genocide in Gaza. Um, so I'd recommend that book if you're liking her writing, I'd recommend that book. Um, I will pause there to see if do people have any thoughts on these quotes. Okay, I'll go to the next one. So insanity or altered consciousness, but maybe I'm not making sense, she asks. Also, I think she alludes to her mother who um had schizophrenia, I think since she was little, and she really had to be a caretaker of her mother. Um, and in the book Wave of Blood, she talks about, I think, having to have her mother move in with her, or having to set her up in an apartment, and then her mother's passing. Um, so there is also that theme of motherhood with her mother and like mental illness. Um, more moon themes, illness. We cannot live without art, but the Promethean force required to bring it forth is immense, is even sick, an index of our greater sickness. It takes a quantity of human grit to accomplish anything great that I don't see how any school could teach. And now everyone gets to have a taste of it, what it means, and what it takes to be thrown back on yourself, and to summon out of absolutely nothing, less than nothing, some kind of treasure, some kind of nectar on which not only you but others might feed, something deeper than food and older than even ideas, and without which your soul would die. And everyone knows what it feels like when the soul, even if for only a moment, dies. We all know it. And that kind of echoes the theme of the soul death and resurrection in women who run with the wolves. And I just wanted to note that this random photo I found is very moon card because it has these kind of two towers. Um, I can't see everybody that, okay. I'm gonna just put the quote back there in case anybody, I mean, she's talking about what it takes to make art, what it takes to be a writer. It is hard. I think it's harder if you're a woman. I think it's even harder if you're or a not non-binary person. I think it's even harder if you're a person of color. It's harder if you do not have money. It is hard. I mean, everything in this world is telling us, especially now, to be distracted instead of literally it's almost, this is a little bit magician card too, because she's talking about pulling from the void of the fool with your magic wand, and which is your pen, and putting something that didn't exist onto the page. That to me is magic, and it's hard. um any thoughts about that? It's interesting that she's talking about it like it's a sickness. I don't quite understand that, but I find it really compelling. Maybe she means because it's like so self-torturing to be a writer or an artist, that's like why it's a kind of sickness. Like, why would you do that to yourself? Except you feel compelled to do it. Your soul would die without it. Okay. Other moon themes, paradox, precarity, and illness. This is something I do to myself. Writing is something I do to myself. Art is. Nobody asked for it. There is an insanity at the heart of it. It has not been my custom to complain about the precarity, the complicated love life. Whoops, trying to move things around. The way it can sensitize you to things so much, you really do become flayed, skinless, walking through the world. I try not to make a thing of all this, the side issues, because this is my work. And if I did not have it, I shudder to think what I'd be making of my passions. There are times writing really feels like dying. There is an element of sacrifice at the root of a certain form of giving. And what's complicated is it answers a very deep need, not in others, but in ourselves. And it sometimes feels like a form of self harm. but the kind from which all kinds of cultures have always drawn succor, which is a theme of that other quote too, is like, it's this difficult thing, but it's this thing that nurtures us. I think she called it fruit in the last quote. I will pause in my talking to see if people have thoughts or questions.
I like her statement about writing. I always find it's interesting what different writers say about, their, I don't know if we call this the process, but they're just talking about writing. And I can,
Yeah.
I can agree with her in a lot of statements she's
Yeah.
making.
It reminds me of Sylvia Plath when she says it. I do it because it feels like hell. I do it so I feel real. I guess you could say I have a call. Um, that's the vein in which she's writing. Now, somebody else, maybe it's not torturous for them to write. God has blessed them. That's not how my life is. But maybe there are people like that. I don't know. I'm always amazed when I see writers who are also like successful doctors who have like a really logical side of their brain, or they have a successful career and then they write, because that's just not me. I admire that. But um yeah, any other thoughts about this one? Okay, and then a couple more thoughts, and then I promise we will write. I turn into an animal to do what I do, and some shame remains in me about this fact, but dying like this is the only way I've managed to become a woman and enjoy all the things a woman enjoys. I have no desire to remain a werewolf every day, and I do not intend to destroy myself opening veins to write you now. I intend to ease off from making new writing for the public right now. I may have to become some other kind of animal for a while. Um, I wonder what would happen if I became a full woman, or if I remained possessed by and never came back to this emulsifying world of sense, in which those among us who are virtuous and candid are every bit as devoured as the tyrants and wastrels who brought us here. Seems very relevant to our current moment, even though it was 2020. I don't want simply to cling to the old modes of gathering, to the former economics, or to the approximation of werewolfhood and womanhood to which my adulthood amounted. I'm going to be honest, I have no idea. She loses me with the werewolfhood and womanhood, but I'm fascinated and I find it compelling. Do people have thoughts?
I just got that the wolf was like a lone
I
wolf.
feel like I have thoughts, but I can't form them.
Yeah, that's how
Yeah.
I feel. And
It's like,
I feel like there's another essay in here that she didn't write. Like, 'cause she, in the other quotes, she's like, I have to turn into an animal. So I'm thinking like, and then it gets into werewolves, and she connects it to being a woman, and it doesn't fully flesh out. No pun intended. But I just find it so compelling. Maybe she wrote another essay later where she teased those really evocative images and connections out. Like, I mean, I guess now that I'm just like, if I were to riff off this picture, I mean, this is me with PMS. I don't know if it's something that simple. Like, you kind of feel like you turn into an angry monster. Um, or if it's something more existential, or maybe that is existential because your body is doing this miraculous thing. Either it's going to be pregnant or it's sloughing off an egg. I mean, it's pretty intense if you really think about it. Um, other thoughts about werewolfhood and womanhood, or just these quotes?
Yeah, I just think I got the whole like wolf, lone wolf, like you're kind of isolated when you write.
Yeah,
You're not like in a community until you kind of share it. And
yeah,
then but it is like this obsession that you have to do it. That's what I
yeah. And if you're a woman, you're expected to be a wife and mother. and you're expected to be nice and sweet and docile, you're not supposed to be an artist. That's very selfish
Or wild.
and wild. Yeah. And so maybe it makes one feel guilty or makes one feel monstrous, or that's how she feels about her womanhood. Because it's combined with being an artist. And I don't, I'm not a man, but I don't personally think they have the same challenge. Uh, yeah, like big reveal. I'm not a man, everybody. Hopefully everybody knew that. Any other thoughts about these quotes? Okay. So I want to give you a big chunk, like 15 minutes. Or let's say 20 minutes. 20 minutes to keep digging into the writing you began at the beginning of class. And I'll put, oops, I was going to say that I'd put those quotes in the chat, but I don't know how to do that with PowerPoint. It might still be the last thing I copied to paste, so I might still be able to do it. So you can keep writing into those, or for a bonus challenge, describe the setting of whatever scene you began writing about with the 5 senses. So, and you can use one of your dreams from your dream journal. And this is a typo, painting, not this panting. You can use this painting, which I thought was really cool and surreal, or you can just make up a setting. Because after this, we'll read